Welcome to today's lecture on inclusion, poverty and economic development in India. This lecture is part of the ongoing series on inequality and difference. It is important to understand the contribution of several sectors in promoting or reducing poverty. Since a large number of people in India are employed in agriculture, it makes sense to know more about the problems that exist in the sector of agriculture. There are a number of land and water related problems, vulnerability to world commodity prices, farmer suicide. 45% of farmers want to leave agriculture but they have no option. A number of disparities exist in growth across regions and crops, and the growth rate has declined more in the rain-fed areas, and a large proportion of Indian agriculture is still rain-fed. So, as one is talking about problems in Indian agriculture, there are a number of long-term factors. A steeper decline in per capita land availability and the shrinkage of farm size. Also, there is a reduction in the share of employment. Still, there is 55% of employment that is generated in agriculture. Main problem is low labor productivity in agriculture. Gap between agricultural and non-agricultural sector is also widening. When we are talking about non-agricultural sector, it basically means industry and services, and basically the agricultural sector is not absorbing workers from agriculture. There are basically three important goals of agricultural development. One is to achieve a substantial growth and raise income, increase productivity, land, labor, diversification to high value agricultural crops, and also rural non-farm income by maintaining food security. Next important goal is sharing growth, equity, focus on small and marginal farmers, lagging regions, focusing on women, etc., and especially focusing on the impoverished regions, especially in eastern India and other rain-fed areas. Another important goal is to maintain sustainability of agriculture by focusing on environmental concerns. There has been a deficit in agriculture growth, as I have just mentioned. Land and water management deficit, investment, credit and infrastructure deficit, then research and technology deficit, market and institutions deficit, as well as education and skill deficit. So, because of all this deficit, there has been a declining trend in income distribution in the agricultural sector. If we talk about rural non-farm sector, poverty cannot be removed with 55% of workers in agriculture. There is a need to promote rural non-farm sector, and this can only be done if there is a shift in production process from urban areas to rural areas. India currently produces around 50 million tons of fruits and 90 million tons of vegetables, and only 2% of these are processed, as against 23% in China, more than 70% in Philippines, and more than 80% in Malaysia. So, half of those engaged in agriculture are still illiterate, and just 5% have completed higher secondary education. Even by 2004-2005, around 50% of in fact more than 50% of rural male workers and 85% of rural female workers were either illiterate or educated only up to primary level. So, education and skills both continue to remain a major constraint as far as rural India is concerned. There are a number of lessons that can be learned from other countries. India growth has frothed from agriculture to services with less focus on manufacturing. The share of employment in manufacturing in Malaysia is 50%, in Korea it was 62%, in China 31%. On the other hand, the share of employment in industry in India was only 26.18% in 2020. So, diversification towards rural non-farm sector in China was one of the important factors that was responsible for a reduction in rural poverty, and due to high agricultural productivity and investment in physical and human capital, that country has become one of the important economic superpowers. Now, if we are talking about the social development, in social sector, significant achievements have to be made in education as well as health. However, Human Development Index rank of India is 131 out of 189 countries as per Human Development Report 2020. So, the social indicators are much lower for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Malnutrition among children is one major problem, with 40% of children still suffering from malnutrition. There are a number of problems that can also be highlighted in the social sector, which are kind of stumbling blocks on the path to social inclusion, and these are related to education and health. Very low levels of social indicators, extremely slow progress, and significant regional, social and gender disparities continue to prevail. Low level and slow growth in public expenditures, particularly on health and education, and very poor quality of delivery systems, these are some of the realities that continue to prevail. And in addition to this, privatization of health and education has further made things difficult for the poor. Now, if we talk about regional disparities, then one can indicate this by taking into consideration the growth trajectory in different parts of the country. So, the per capita income, the highest per capita income of rupees was indicated in Punjab, while the lowest per capita income state was Bihar with rupees 3557. Now, the female infant mortality varies from 12 in Kerala to much higher, almost more than 80 in Madhya Pradesh, and female literacy varies from 33.6% in Bihar to 88% in Kerala. So, with such wide regional disparity prevailing, again it becomes a distant dream to have an inclusive society. Now, these regional disparities which are to be seen in interstate growth trajectories, in the growth of gross state domestic product, they have increased specifically in the post reform period compared to the 80s. So, post 1990s, one can say that these regional disparities which already existed have further increased, and in general the richer states grew faster than the poorer states. There are a number of causes for these regional disparities. For example, issues related to investment in physical and human capital, issues related to technology, then institutions including governance, then the issues related to environment, degradation of land, water, increase in pollution levels, challenges of climatic change, then consumption patterns of rich which are further eroding the environment, and a very higher economic growth should not lead to decline in the environment or further pollution of the environment, and sustainability must be considered as the most important benchmark while one is talking about any kind of progress. Now, rural poverty again is very high in some states, as you can see in this graph that is being shared on the screen. So, there is clearly a tapering up that is taking place, and the poorer states of course show a much higher rural poverty as compared to the so called richer states. The productivity difference also exists across the states, and this has further contributed to regional inequalities. So, here again you can see that how the entire curve is tapering, and which clearly indicates that there are extreme differences that exist as far as the aspect of productivity is also taken into account. And agriculture still employs many, and here again you can identify specific states where agriculture continues to employ a much larger number of people as compared to the other states where there are avenues related to services sector or manufacturing sector which have kind of provided an alternative employment. One major factor that is kind of reducing the income of those states which are heavily dependent on agriculture is the declining agricultural productivity due to so many factors that has been discussed. Now, while this is one part of the story, another part of the story is the India growth story. But here again we need to ask a question as to how inclusive this growth story has been. Let us first discuss the context of the growth story. Growth has been remarkable and since mid 1980s, and it was between 6 to 8% per annum thereafter. But poverty has the impact on poverty has been negligible. So, while poverty declined from 36% in 1993 to 28% in 2004, it was a kind of a 0.8 percent point reduction per annum compared to 1.6% poverty reduction per annum in Bangladesh and Nepal. So, clearly these are examples of some countries where poverty is declining at a higher rate as compared to India. This has raised serious concerns that India's growth is not inclusive or its benefits are not being widely shared, and rather they are being appropriated by the rich and the powerful. And close to 300 million people still live in deep poverty at less than $1 a day. Now, a question that can be asked here is that why India's growth is not adequately inclusive. So, while the growth has been happening, but the problem is that it is not inclusive. Growth has diverged across regions, leaving behind the large populous states of North, Central and Northeast India behind. Growth has not been creating enough good jobs that provide stable earnings for households to climb the ladder and to come out of the vicious cycle of poverty. Growth in the agriculture sector, which employs more than half of India's workers, has been again very less, around somewhere around 2%. So growth has left behind key sections of the population, and these are the females, then the tribal population, then the Dalits, religious minorities. All these are lagging behind in job opportunities, earnings, as well as human development. So wage growth is heavily concentrated at the top end. So there is no bottom down approach which has been visible, and employment is also dominated by informal sector jobs, as you can see in this graph that is being shared on the screen. So the largest concentration of casual workers is indicates that they do not really have any kind of job security. Then even several public services are quite weak in the poorer regions, as is visible from this map, which indicates the immunization coverage, which again shows that how the poorer states have much to ask for, and the more developed states show a more successful immunization coverage that has taken place. So inequality is not only about economic factors, it is not only about income, it is also about public services and how there is a discrepancy that exists. Now, coming back to the issue of exclusion, one can say that female labor force participation rates have remained quite low despite rising education levels among women, because of absence of suitable opportunities. Also, there exists significant wage discrimination among casual laborers. Women get about half the wages of men. Less than 1/3 of this gap can be explained by conventional factors such as skills, location, industry, etc. Another persistent problem has been access to finance. As per the Rural Finance Access Survey, 87% of the poorest households surveyed, which largely consisted of marginal farmers, do not have access to credit. The rich pay a relatively low rate, that was 33%, while the poor paid rates of around 104% and got only 8% of the credit. So this problem again persists in certain pockets. Now, what is needed is a set of recommendations for a strong and balanced regional development and improved universal access to core public services. So it is not only per capita income that one is targeting, but also access to core public services. Also, there is a need to benchmark the states and strengthen the sharing of best practices, in particular on labor regulations, land laws, redistribution of land, redistribution of resources, etc. Also enable reforms in land ownership laws and step up the digitization of land records so that the poor are not cheated. There is a need to give municipalities more and clearer spending as well as taxing powers. Now, what should be done to improve inclusive growth? Of course, one important aspect is equity. Equity is important for economic development, agricultural development. Economic reforms are important, but macro poor policies related to fiscal, trade, financial, monetary aspects are very crucial, and all these should have a clear-cut pro-poor focus rather than only a growth focus. So the structural change should follow agriculture, industry, services sequence, because only then more people will get access to more job opportunities. There has to be a development of manufacturing sector, especially in the rural areas, for more productive employment. Also, there is a need for equality of opportunities as well as universal access to quality education. And here again the Southeast Asian and the East Asian experience can be utilized in order to tread the path of equity and equality. Now, there also is a very important role of technology. There has to be a shift in the focus of reforms to delivery systems. So, there is importance of women's economic and social empowerment. There is the strategy of decentralization, then the economic reforms in relation to socio-political environment. Also, there is a need for a rights-based approach which should be all encompassing. That means it should cover civil, political, economic and cultural factors also. Now, in this background, I would like to discuss about the Human Development Index to kind of gauge the situation of India and as to why India has been lagging behind. The quality of life people enjoy in a country, the opportunities they have and the freedoms they enjoy are all important aspects of development, and all these aspects are indicated by the Human Development Index. The concept of human development was introduced by Dr. Mehboob ul Haq, who has described human development as development that enlarges people's choices and improves their lives. So, basically it means access to resources, health and education, which are the key areas in human development. There were 4 pillars of human development that have been outlined are equity, sustainability, productivity and empowerment. Equity largely refers to making equal access to opportunities that are available to everybody, while sustainability means a continuity in the availability of opportunities, which means that the opportunities are not only limited for the current generation, but the coming generations would also continue to enjoy the resources and the opportunities. Then the third important aspect is productivity, which means human labor productivity, and last is empowerment, which means to have the power to make choices. Now, what is Human Development Index and why was it devised? This was largely a tool that was used to measure a country's overall achievement in its social and economic dimensions. So, the HDI is a composite statistic of life expectancy, education, per capita income indicators, and all of these are used to rank countries into 4 tiers of human development that I have just now explained. Now, talking about the origin of the concept of HDI, it was devised and launched by Pakistani economist Mehboob ul Haq in 1990. Amartya Sen and Mehboob ul Haq worked upon the capabilities and functioning which provided conceptual framework, and it was published by UNDP, United Nations Development Programme. Several factors that are considered for HDI are life expectancy, education, income levels, and what has emerged out of this is to create an overall score between 0 and 1.1. Now, 1 indicates a high level of economic development, while 0 indicates a very low level. Now, coming to measuring human development, HDI ranks the countries based on their performance in the key areas of health, education and access to resources. So, while health indicates expectancy at birth, health is indicated through expectancy at birth, while in the field of education, the adult literacy rate and the gross enrollment ratio represent access to knowledge, while access to resources is measured in terms of the purchasing power in US dollars. India is clearly lagging behind in HDI. There are a number of reasons for this. Large number of population in India lives in slums, that is around more than 150 million, and then 42% of children below 5 years of age are underweight and more than 50% are stunted. Low spending on education by the government, lack of schemes for urban poor, and also the deteriorating environment and depletion of resources. So, there is a need to have a broad based and inclusive growth to benefit all the sections of society and improve economic growth as well. It is more challenging for the country to achieve inclusive growth than getting 8 to 10% growth in GDP. There are strong socio-economic and political reasons for achieving a broader and inclusive growth. Socially, lack of inclusive growth leads to unrest among people, and this also kind of creates conflict in society. And politically, no government in a democracy can afford to ignore large sections of workers and non-working population. And economically also, we can say that if equity is promoted, then economic growth would also happen. So, with these details, I would leave the audience thinking more in terms of sustainability and how to bring about inclusivity. If it is not inclusive, it can generate social tensions. So, politically, for having a stable and democratic society, one needs to have inclusive growth. Thanks a lot.